Hi, John Jenkins from Hindsight here. Welcome to the third of our 4 Hindsight Cornerstone videos. This one is all about alerts. So this one we're actually going to get our hands dirty and we're going to crack on and do some work and clear up some of the books and records for clients. So without further ado, what we're going to be talking about in this session is how we can see the problems that require attention within our Xero records about logging into each and every single Xero account for our clients, and more importantly what we can do to take action based on the alerts that Hindsight finds for you. So there are multiple different types of alerts that Hindsight flags up. In total there are 21 paid alerts and there are 10 free alerts, and they range from checking bank balances and unreconciled transactions, through to checking the sales ledger, debtors, creditors, so on and so forth. And they're loosely categorised into 4 different sections, being bank, sales, debtors and creditors, but there is more to the system than that. So what is an alert, first and foremost? So an alert is a piece of information that Hindsight finds for you which sits outside the parameters for that client. So for each client you've got the ability to customize what Hindsight looks and checks for, and if we find an exception that sits outside of that, then we'll flag that up as an alert. You may often hear me refer to it between an alert and an insight. I do tend to use them interchangeable. However, an alert is more of a kind of transactional based item, where an insight might be a snippet of information that might just be harder to find and not necessarily something that you particularly look for. An example of that might be invoice reminders. Are they turned on, yes or no? That's an insight as opposed to an alert, and I'll refer to the two things pretty much as one and the same thing as we go through. So the first thing that we need to concentrate on when we are dealing with Hindsight and what it's going to flag up for us, of course, is the settings. And we'll go through the settings in Hindsight in a second in more detail, but essentially what we're going to cover is what the practice defaults are, the individual client settings where you can customize the settings to your own client requirements, bank thresholds and credit cards, how we can reset those defaults if we decide that we'd like to start again from scratch, and ultimately when we're in the system, where can we find more help. So the first thing we're going to talk about is practice defaults and what practice defaults actually mean. Every time you set up a new organisation or you connect a new Xero org to your Hindsight account, you don't necessarily want to start from scratch. So we've effectively, within the practice admin section, given you a template that you can work from for your practice, and you'll have your own specific way that you want to work. But essentially, what this does is it provides you with a list and a grid of all of the different types of alerts that are within Hindsight. These are the 21 paid options. With the free ones, there are no practice defaults or settings. They're just a straightforward yes or no type scenario. So these will just be applicable to your paid ones. And when you set your practice up, you would have got the ability to add these at the time. Now, you might not know initially what you want these to be, so you can come back in and you can tweak these. Now, if you are going to be loading clients in batches, then we would probably suggest that you set your practice defaults up to be specific. So maybe you've got a niche, maybe you've got cash customers. What we'd recommend is that you set those practice defaults up to be applicable to those batches, connect your Xero orgs to Hindsight, and then they will be starting from the position that you want them to, and that avoids you having to go in to 50 individual client organisations and tweak the settings for every single one of those. But within the practice defaults, what you can see is we've got different variables for each alert. We've got different priorities. There are 3 priority levels that you can apply to an alert. Critical being obviously the most pressing. You have user roles. So if you've watched the previous videos, you'll know that when we add users and assign them to clients, they take one of 3 different roles. And then you have the ability to have the alerts turned on or off by default. So every time we connect a new org, this is what it's going to look like. You can see on mine it's pretty sparse. I've actually only got a couple of things turned on, which means I'd have a lot of work to do when I want to add a new org. So I would probably go through and turn some of these other items on. So that'll do me, and then I can just hit the save button, and that's now what's going to be applied to all my new orgs that I connect from this day. One of the other things that you'll notice is at the end of every description of the alert, there's a brief description of what the alert carries out. There is a question mark. If you click on that question mark, it will take you to a help guide in our knowledge base and explain to you more information about what this alert is actually doing in the background, what checks does it run, what does it exclude, how does it actually work for you. Okay, so we've connected an org. This is what it would start with as its starting point. We have the ability to customize everything for each individual client. So if I go into an individual client record, I've got 3 tabs here. I've got alert settings, bank account settings, and credit card thresholds. If I go to alert settings, we can see this is exactly the same screen as we had a second ago in the practice default. So what happens when we connect a new org is it grabs those practice defaults and it assigns it to this client as a snapshot. Anything that we touch in here is specific for this client and this client only. So this is where we've got the ability to adapt, tailor and tweak every alert to our client specifications. So we can change the variables, we can change the priorities, we can change who it's assigned to. What you can see from here is previously we had user roles. We've actually got named individuals as well now. So these named individuals are people that are assigned to this client. So rather than assigning something to a role, so that it appears for all of those people that have that role basis, we can assign it to an individual named person. So if we've got an expert in our practice who deals with credit control, we may wish to assign all of the debtor type alerts to that named individual, and they will then be responsible for all the alerts for that item. We can also turn stuff on and off. In here, we've got items around when it last triggered, so you've got an idea of when this alert last triggered for this client. You'll see a snooze option as well. Don't tend to use that in here unless you know that a client's going to be on holiday for a period of time, and then you could come in here and snooze these items. I tend to use this at the alert level, and we'll see that in just a second. And one of the other options we've got here is practice default. So if we decided that this client's settings had got into a bit of a pickle, or we decided that we've updated our practice defaults and we want to apply that to multiple clients, if I hit this apply button here, what it's telling me it's going to do is it's going to override my settings and it's going to bring in top the practice defaults again. So I'm going to start essentially again with what the practice defaults are as they sit at the moment. So if you had lots of things that you wanted to change, it'd probably be sensible to update the practice defaults and then hit that apply button, rather than trying to look at 20, 50, 100 different clients individually. Now, we've spoken about practice defaults from the alerts point of view. Now, one of the things that we've got is the ability to amend and customize the bank account settings. The practice defaults or the hindsight defaults for the bank are very simple. Okay, we do not know how many bank accounts you're going to have. We do not know what types of bank accounts that you are going to have. So it didn't seem sensible to give you practice defaults for bank accounts, because who knows what they should look like. In hindsight, whenever you connect a new org, if there are bank accounts present, it's a very simple. The starting trigger threshold is below £10,000. So any bank account that's below 10k would get flagged up as an alert. So this is one of the most important things that we highly recommend that you do when using the system. You'll be quite happy to potentially leave the practice defaults and the alert settings as they are. However, I would always recommend you come in and at least update the bank account settings, because this is probably the one that's going to generate the most amount of alerts for you. So we can see in my top section here, we've got thresholds for the bank account. I've got 3 bank accounts for this client. I've actually got 2 of the alerts turned off. So I've only got 1 alert for my current account turned on. And I've told the system that I want it to flag up when the amount of £100 below. So if it goes below £100, Hindsight will create an alert for that. The other options I've got are percentage, and the trigger percentage here will tell me when I get to within 10% of this £100 trigger threshold. So if I decided to change that and say, tell me when I get to within 10% of £100, it's going to flag up when I get to £90. Okay, we've got a similar thing here for overdrafts. If you know a bank account has an overdraft amount, you can put the overdraft amount in the trigger threshold and then tell the system to flag up when you get to within X% of that threshold. So this can help you tell a client when they need to move some money around. And then we have unreconciled bank transactions and the number of days since the bank was last reconciled. These are individual for every different bank account that a client might have. The unreconciled bank transactions are pretty simplistic. It's the number of unreconciled transactions per your zero ledgers. I've got mine set at 1, so it's a very low threshold. So literally every time there's an unreconciled transaction, let me know and I'll go and do the bookkeeping for it. The date the bank was last reconciled looks at, if you've got unreconciled transactions, what is the date of that oldest transaction. So you see I've got 7, 30 and 90 in here for my number of days. That's because my agreement with the client is I'm going to keep this bank account reconciled weekly, this one monthly, and the savings account quarterly, because there's hardly ever any transactions on there. Credit card thresholds. I don't have any active credit cards for this particular client, but if I did, it'd be similar to the bank account settings. And here we list out each of the credit cards, and you've got the ability to put in what the trigger threshold is. So that would be, what is the balance for this card? You know, what's the limit? Is it 3,000, 5,000, 10,000? And then we can put in a pound or percentage amount to tell us when we get to within that amount. So what Hindsight does every day is it collects the data from zero and it will compare it to this grid for this client. If it falls outside of this grid, that's when we generate an alert to tell you there's an event or an exception that has occurred, and then the alerts are generated first thing in the morning. So when you come into work in the morning, your alerts will be there ready and waiting for you. We don't generate alerts on Saturdays and Sundays. I think everyone works hard enough, so we don't do it on Saturdays and Sundays to give you a rest. Okay, so that is the settings side of Hindsight and the alerts. Okay, so we've just walked through practice defaults and settings for clients, and ultimately what you will find is, depending on the client and the quality of their records, you could end up with quite a lot of alerts to start off with, and the aim of the game is obviously to reduce those alerts to a manageable level. One of the things that can help you identify what needs to be tackled and in which order is the filters in the alert section of the system itself. So there are some kind of defaults that happen, but you can filter the alerts by the different alert types, by the different assignees. So as well as looking at just your alerts, you can also look at what other people have assigned to them and help them out if you're working as part of the team. We can also dive into individual clients if we wish to, and we can also just tackle the alerts by the priorities, maybe deal with the critical ones first if we're short of time, and come back to the others when we need to. So this is what it looks like in Hindsight. We're going to the alert section. So the first thing you'll notice is I'm already default. So this is my default position. The first time I log into the system for the day, it's always going to default to showing the alerts for just myself. Okay. Now I'm going to hit the clear all button because I want you to see all of the different alerts that flag up. It's also important just to think about, depending on who's working in the practice, if you don't hit the clear all button, you may miss things if you're not assigned to them that might still need actioning. So it's always a sensible idea that if you clear your own list, hit the clear all button anyway, just to see if there's anything else in there, because there may be some things that have been misassigned, or there may be an opportunity to help somebody else in your team that needs assistance as well. Okay, so one of the visual aids to help you in terms of looking at the alerts is the initials in these icons against the alert list. So I'm assigned to 7 alerts, as we can see identified down here, but the second, third and fourth alerts here actually have multiple assignees allocated against them, and this is where the user roles come into effect. There are 4 initials against these second and third alerts because there are 4 individuals within the practice that are assigned to them. So if these alerts were assigned to a named individual, it would just have 1 person against that. Now, you've got to be careful here, particularly when you're working in teams, not to sit there and expect somebody else to kind of pick these up. Hence the reason it might be sensible to hit the clear all button anyway and just work from a complete list. So I had 7 that were assigned to me. We can now see that the total was actually 29. There are 10 alerts per page. I've now got the ability to change the way in which I look at this information. So I can look at individual alerts if I like. The number after the alert name is the total of alerts. So we've got 29 alerts and they're split 5, 5, 2, 2, 1, so on and so forth. So if an alert doesn't have a number after it, that means that there were none of that alert type that have triggered today. So there's no point looking at these because you won't see anything. You can select multiple items by clicking on them. So if there are certain areas of the business that I wanted to look at, so as an example, perhaps we just want to deal with the bank. We've got 3 different bank alerts here, so I can click on those and I've now got 11 different alerts that are being displayed. And we can see up in the filter that it tells us that we've got 3 items. We can use the filters and have multiple options available to us if we want to drill down further into these. The list shows the alerts color coded. So the top 5 are the criticals. Urgent are amber, medium is blue, and the free ones are grey. The alert list is automatically defaulted into that priority list. Now, just going to take all of these off. So again, that brings back the whole list. We could look at the alerts that are assigned to certain team members if we wanted to, and we can also just look at the list from a client point of view. Okay, so there's several different options of how you can deal with that. You know, one option, as an example, would be to look at an individual client, but then say I only want to look at the critical alerts for that client. However you want, it's your information. You know, you can slice it and dice it however you want to work out what needs to be dealt with. From this list, the other things you can see is we can complete these alerts from here as well as over here on the preview list. So this left-hand panel is effectively what we refer to as the alerts list, and that's simply is how we filter and look at this to look at different pieces of information. When working with the lists from the left-hand side, if you want to change the alert information that you see on the right-hand side there, it's pretty simple. We can just click into the alert in the list, and then that will display the corresponding piece of information on the right-hand side of the page. So whatever it is that we want to take a look at, then we can just run through the list in that way. Okay, so we've just been through the left-hand side of the screen there, and we've discussed all of the different options around filtering and the alert list. Now, what we call the right-hand side of the screen, once we've clicked on an item in the list, is what we call the alert preview, and that is the piece of information that's being flagged up, the settings that are applied to it, what it's telling you, and how you can use the bits of information that sit within the preview. If you're working with the data because you're responsible for doing the bookkeeping, the way in which you approach clearing alerts will be different to that than if it's the client that's responsible. So in each alert, we've given you the ability to kind of export information and get hot links back to the zero transaction so that you can navigate around the system really quickly and easily and have simple workflows. So we'll take a look at a few examples now. So we've got a duplicate postings item here, and essentially the system is just telling us, obviously the colour of the preview is the critical, medium or urgent colours. So you will find, depending on what you click on the left hand side, if this is a urgent priority alert, then it will flag that up, and the colour coding shows you the same piece of information as well, just to make it really simple and easy for you to kind of understand where you are. The star after the client's name is telling us that we do the bookkeeping for this client, we're responsible for this one. So from a settings point of view, you don't have to go back to the client settings if you want to update something. If an alert triggers, you can hit the blue cog icon in the top right hand corner here, and this is showing you the alert settings for that client for that particular type of alert. So if we decided we no longer wanted to know when there was a bill overdue or due within the next 14 days, we could change the variable here. So if we decided we just wanted to know when bills are overdue, we can change it to 0. If we've spoken to the client about this, but the client's on holiday or they're really busy for a couple of weeks and they can't talk to us, we can snooze it. Snoozing an alert basically tells the system that we don't want to display it. So it will still sync with 0, it will still pull the data across in the background, but what it will do is it will not flag this up to you again until the 28th of March. Okay, and that's if it's triggers on the 28th of March. If we get to the 28th of March and this bill is being paid, then there will be no alert for that. So it's just a nice way to be able to kind of dumb down the information that's being displayed if you don't need to know about it for a period of time without turning it off, because you could forget to turn it back on again. And also we can change who it gets assigned to and the priority of the alert here. As you're working through the alerts, you'll just find there will be things that flag up. The situation with the client has changed. It's just a quick and easy method to do this. Once we've changed these settings, if we hit the complete button to clear the alert, the following day when it runs these alerts again, it will apply those new rules and that new logic to it. I've got a complete button up the top here in the right hand corner. So if maybe I've reconciled the bank and this bill's no longer outstanding, or it's a duplicate and it's been voided in 0, or we've now paid it because it was overdue and we've sorted the payment out for that, we can go ahead and hit the complete button in the top right hand corner. What we can also do is hit the complete button down the bottom here as well. Now, depending on the alert that we're looking at, that will determine the information that we're being shown. Each alert gives different information points. What is pretty consistent across the system are the tables at the bottom. So for this table, we've got the ability to copy it to a clipboard, export it to Excel, or save it as a PDF. And that goes for all of the different alerts that have these tables at the bottom. If you've got lots of data to work with, if I had multiple pages, I'd be able to change the different number of items that I see. There is also paging, there's pagination that will appear at the bottom if I've got multiple pages. And just like on the dashboards, these table headers are sortable, and you can sort by more than one column if you like by hitting Shift and clicking on the mouse. So again, if we have multiple bits of information in here, we could sort by the contact, then by the amount, or by the amount and then how many days it's overdue, however you need to display that information. The search box also allows you to do multiple searches. So if we wanted to look for a particular contact or maybe a part invoice reference, if you type in the contact name and then a space, you can actually do multiple searches at the same time. Whatever's displayed in these boxes, whenever you choose to copy the Excel or the PDF option, that is what will actually be downloaded. So if the client's responsible for doing their own bookkeeping and you want to provide them with a snapshot of some information where you need them to complete something in order to be able to get their books and records up to date, you can simply copy this or put it into an Excel document and email that out to them for them to deal with. Anywhere within the alert screens that you see the zero icon, that will tell you that the hyperlink information underneath is a hyperlink back into Xero. So with the alerts, where possible and where it makes sense, we've given you the ability to hotlink back into certain transaction types. So for this one, I'll be able to go into the invoices in Xero and look at the information that's available to us there. On the type of table and the data that we're displaying here, we have also included hot links to other reports or other sections of Xero that we think it would be useful to go to. With this one being age payables, sometimes you don't want to just look at one individual transaction. The next thing that you'll probably do is go, well, while I'm here, I need to look at the age payables, see if there's anything else that's outstanding or needs dealing with. So you can do that by clicking on the hot link for that as well. One of the great advantages of working in this way, rather than trying to log into all the different Xero organizations, is that whatever hot link you click on is going to take you directly into that organization. So there's no going to the top left, searching for the client's name, going into that org, trying to remember why you went in there, losing a few seconds every time you do that across the course of the day. Eats into your time massively. So this is a big time saver working in this way. Okay, so this is the big finale, the big hurrah. Once Hindsight's done all of the work and flagged up to you any exceptions or event-based issues that need to be dealt with, you've had a look through the list, you understand what needs to be tackled, you may have gone into Xero and dealt with some of those items. Ultimately, what we need to do is tell the system that we've dealt with those problems. Okay. Now, depending on the alert type, there will be different options available to you. Every alert has the option of being completed, and that's the green button. Some of the alerts will have the option to dismiss. Dismiss is a transactional level item. What that enables you to do is to tell the system not to flag that item up for you again. So you recognise that the system is correct, but for one reason or another you've decided you are not going to correct it in Xero, and there are legitimate reasons why you might do that. If you've corrected something if you corrected a bill by posting credit note, you're not going to want to unpick the bill and the credit note when you've already dealt with it and you're going to end up in the same situation afterwards. The exclude option is slightly different. With exclude, what you're telling the system to do is, when it runs its checks, don't look for that account code, that particular supplier, or that particular customer. So you're actually telling us to miss certain items from being checked. An example of that might be on inconsistent postings when we're looking for bills that are posted to different account codes. Amazon, it's perfectly legitimate to post Amazon to multiple different account codes. It doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just you've bought lots of different stuff from there. You won't want us telling you every time you've done that. So the first time it gets flagged up, even if it presents 50 instances of it, on the first one, if you hit the exclude contact button from the drop down, it will allow you to take Amazon out for any future checks and balances for that client. The final item to just kind of flag up is autocomplete. So what autocomplete does is, when we run the checks every day, if this duplicate posting here, if we don't complete it, we don't log into the system, maybe we've been on holiday ourselves, so we've not been in the system for a few days, every day when we check the zero ledgers, we're checking the same data again. Tomorrow, if this duplicate posting had been dealt with and it had been voided, we wouldn't flag this up again for you to take a look at, because we know that it's been dealt with. So day by day, if we find an alert that's been corrected, we will auto-complete that alert for you. Now, the reason we would always tell you to tell the system that you've completed it is because it fills in the other data. It updates your dashboards and it notifies your managers what work you've been doing. So you can just leave it to auto-complete, but in the background we are checking and logging those items and things like your performance metrics. If something's been auto-completed rather than you telling the system that you've completed it, it won't count towards the work that you've carried out. So we would highly recommend coming in here and hitting the complete button. When we've got items that have got multiple instances, so for sales invoices due for Just Add Tech, we've got 11 items. If I hit the complete button here, you see I've got multiple bills down here. I can hit the complete button or dismiss from here. If I know that all of those have been dealt with, rather than hitting all 11 complete, I can just say to the system that the whole lot's been dealt with, and it's just going to say, are you certain that you want to mark all of these as complete? And if I say yes to that, it will then close all of those down. Now, the main thing with completing an alert in Xero is, in hindsight, is that you are telling the system that you have dealt with that issue. So tomorrow when we check, if that issue is still there, it will come back again and again and again until the underlying issue's been dealt with. You can, of course, dismiss something or exclude it, but if you start doing too much of that, it will get flagged up on the manager's dashboard, as outlined in video 2 of the series. Too many exclusions and too many dismissals would probably imply that there's still lots of work there that needs to be carried out by somebody. So that's alerts in hindsight. Quite a long, lengthy video here, but the alerts process within Hindsight is pretty much the bedrock for the rest of the system. So it's vitally important that we check the stuff on a regular basis. We tweak the alert settings where we need to. We want to reduce down the amount of alerts that we're seeing. A reduction in alerts would imply that we're doing a better job. We've got better process, procedures and systems in place. If the number of alerts continues to stay around the same or increases, then it would probably highlight that there are weaknesses and problems within the business controls that need to be looked at.